Western Ag Network is on the road. We're in Salt Lake City, Utah for the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention. Well, hi everyone from the Western Ag Network. I'm Russell Nemetz, and it's time for another On the Road segment, where this year Farm Bureau members from across the country are meeting here in Salt Lake City, Utah for the American Farm Bureau Federation's 105th annual convention. And of course, this convention is once again providing a great venue where farmers and ranchers can meet, talk about the successes and even the challenges in agriculture these days, and also get the tools and inspiration needed to keep farming and ranching into the future. Well, the power of any grassroots organization always lies with its membership. And nothing rings more true for organizations like Farm Bureau. Now with us is Cyndi Johnson, the president of the Montana Farm Bureau Federation from Conrad. And Cyndi today finds us in Salt Lake City, Utah for the 105th annual American Farm Bureau Federation convention. And how important is it for conventions like this, for AFBF, to bring farmers and ranchers together, like yourself out of Montana, talk about the successes, but also talk about some of the challenges?
Well, it's critical for Farm Bureau. And Farm Bureau is the largest agriculture voice in the country. It's obviously the largest agriculture voice in Montana. But here is really where the rubber meets the road. This is where all of that grassroots policy is coming to the table. The delegate body on Tuesday will have those conversations about those proposed policies and take them into the American Farm Bureau policy book, if you will. And based on those policies, those are the issues that we support. Those become our priority focuses. And yesterday we started off the conference with basically a celebration of the Women's Leadership Committee. They had their caucus. They met. Some really innovative things were going on with the Young Farmer and Rancher organization, in addition to the discussion meet that we have. And Todd Blackman from Montana, we were really proud to have him in that competition, and he's doing an amazing job. He's representing Montana very well.
Well, it is really cool. I mean, let's just stay on that YFNR theme for just a minute. I mean, we talk about Todd Lackman coming out of Montana, but I did look at some of the other names on the Sweet 16 as we do this interview. There's also a couple others from the West, but more importantly, how cool is it to have a national organization like Farm Bureau that believes in our young people so much?
It is important for the organization to build our leaders, and you've got to build them from the young people. They're all coming behind us. The weight of the world is on their shoulders right now, and we need to be able to give them the tools to do that really heavy lift.
Well, and you talk about the power of Farm Bureau does in fact lie with its membership. And Tuesday during the delegate session, AFBF will get its roadmap as what will be key priorities for this year and beyond. And of course, one that we've been talking about a lot has been the Farm Bill. We last spoke at your state convention in Billings. Of course, a lot of other state conventions across America have since happened. And we didn't get a Farm Bill per se last year, but we did get an extension. At least that's a small victory.
It is a small victory. They're not giving us a lot of hope for a Farm Bill even in September. And when we visited in November, we thought maybe the end of March. And then it became July, and then it became September, and now they're going, maybe we have to look at another extension. And so that's disappointing for all of us. And so one of the pushes from this convention, because there are 5,000 or 6,000 of us here, and we're all being encouraged to contact our congressmen, our leaders in Washington, D.C., and say, get it done. It's critical. It's critical for American agriculture to get a Farm Bill.
Well, and that was one of the key messages that AFBF President Zippy Duval delivered to this delegation this morning. Of course, this year's convention theme is New Frontiers, and there's a lot of that messaging in this year's theme, right?
There is. Farm Bureau is accustomed to New Frontiers, and so this is a year for us to celebrate that. We're looking forward to all of the challenges that we've got in front of us, the Endangered Species Act, the Farm Bill, obviously. Water continues to be a huge issue in the western United States, and we're very thankful for the pushback for the waters of the U.S. and the pushback to the SEC on the proposed natural asset corporations. We're very thankful that they pulled that proposal So there's a lot of new frontiers that we face, and we come together to help each other solve these problems.
Well, and one of those frontiers for those of us out here in the West and for state farm bureaus like Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Montana, I could go on and on and on, is keeping our ranchers that utilize America's public lands on our federal lands so that we can pass our operation on to the next generation.
Yes, public lands will continue to be at the forefront for all of us. We are we're preparing to mobilize our body, if you will, to try to push back on some of those public proposals that are coming out of the Bureau of Land Management and some of our other federal agencies, because we believe that Montana farmers and ranchers, American farmers and ranchers, they are the best stewards of this land. They've been taking care of it for 400 years. There's nobody that can do a better job.
And let's leave it at that. Again, we've been visiting with Cyndi Johnson, the president of the Montana Farm Bureau Federation, from here in Salt Lake City, Utah, the host city this year of the American Farm Bureau Federation's 105th annual convention, and really take Cyndi's and other state presidents and, of course, Zippy Duval's message to heart. Leadership does come in the form of numbers, and your voice does matter, whether it's at the local, state, or national level. For more of our coverage from here at the Farm Bureau Convention in Utah this year, you can visit us online at westernagnetwork.com or check us out on Facebook. Well, trade still remains a key priority for organizations like the American Farm Bureau Federation. And this year here in Salt Lake City, Utah, at Farm Bureau's 105th annual convention, one of this year's keynote speakers was Alexis Taylor. She's the USDA's Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. And thank you, Madam Undersecretary, for joining us here on the Western Ag Network to talk about trade and why it's still so important to America's farmers and ranchers.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's just dive into it now, Alexis. We talk a lot about trade in these farm and ranch programs, and these organizations like Farm Bureau talk a lot about trade at conventions like this. Why is it so important?
Trade still makes up a significant part of farmers and ranchers' bottom line. And part of my job and what we do at USDA is really to try and work to promote our agricultural sector's profitability. Roughly across the whole ag sector, about 20% of what we're producing is being exported. And so those markets are key to our rural communities staying strong and really thriving.
We've also talked about some headwinds that have emerged here lately on the trade front. Walk us through what some of those headwinds are and why we're seeing that, and if there's any sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, while we are experiencing some strong trade headwinds, I do want us to not lose sight of that we have had record years of agricultural trade. Last year, nearly $200 billion worth of food and agricultural products were exported from the United States around the world. But there are challenges. We are facing increased competition, particularly from South America, strong US dollar. And so I think that's really on us then to be out there, to be building relationships, to be investing in our agricultural export markets to make sure we're able to compete with people all over the world who are aggressively pursuing these markets as well.
Here in Salt Lake, Alexis, you talked a little bit about, why the Indo-Pacific region is so important to farmers and ranchers, and especially to like our audience out in the West in states like Montana and Idaho and Colorado, where so much of our high quality cereal grains and beef ends up. Talk about why Indo-Pacific and that region is so important.
There are a couple regions in the world that I think are key for us to be competing in, for us to have a really strong presence in, and Southeast Asia is one of them. A couple things we're seeing is young populations, increasingly expanded middle classes, urbanizing population centers, modernizing food retail systems, all driving towards U.S. agriculture really being able to compete in these marketplaces. And with that young population, able to show up today, build lifelong consumers of U.S. food and ag products. And I'm really excited about that opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why USDA recently announced and created a brand new program, 1.2 billion US dollars funding into the Regional Agriculture Promotion Program to support our industry to go into new markets where we see growth potential, brand new potential to expand our food and agricultural exporting relationship.
So explain to our audience out there, when you participate in trade missions, whether it's Indo-Pacific region or elsewhere in the world, talk about the reception that you get when you bring farmers and ranchers, or you bring other U.S. government officials to their country, and you show them different products and opportunities that were ultimately raised on U.S. farms and ranches.
Trade is still about relationships. We talk about it as a trading relationship. And so showing up, meeting people in person is so critical to building strong relationships that last decades. And people know U.S. agriculture, U.S. food products for a couple things: high quality, cost competitive, and safe. And so there's a real interest in what we're producing, what they are able to access in that market. And so it's just overall really positive. But I also think meeting the people, meeting the farmers, the ranchers, the businesses who are producing the product and who are exporting that product, it makes it very tangible to those importers and those buyers and those government officials who are setting policies that either can facilitate trade or make trade very challenging for U.S. producers. And so I think that is so important, and why we do these trade missions is to open doors, hopefully help our industry walk through those doors, but also really make it a tangible experience for people in those countries about what we do and why we produce things a certain way and what the benefit of that is, whether economically, for their consumers, or the environment.
During the Biden administration, one of the key priorities at the U.S. Department of Agriculture has been initiating climate smart initiative type practices on our farms and ranches. There was a real good question asked here in Salt Lake City by a farmer from Nebraska, and he just said, through the course of time, we're faced with different barriers when it comes to trade. Will these climate smart initiatives become one of them?
Well, we're working hard so that doesn't happen. I think there is a real concern that climate smart farming practices, sustainable farming practices could become the next barrier that we argue about for decades to come. But we don't want that to happen. So one of the things we're able to do, because of the investments that we have made at USDA with farmers in every state in the country, is around the partnerships for climate smart commodities. We've invested $3 billion. We are doing 141 projects on 25 million acres. But what that does internationally is give us credibility. We're able to talk to trading partners, and there is not a country I visit or a trading partner I meet with that is not interested in what we're doing in climate smart agriculture, how we're working to try and help mitigate the impacts of climate change, but also help our agricultural sector adapt to the impacts of climate change. Everyone has an interest in what we're doing, what we're learning. Most countries don't have $3 billion to invest in this, and so it has provided us real credibility globally to talk about this in a serious way. And our hope is to show there are many ways to address the climate crisis and achieve the same goals and objectives with a voluntary incentive-based approach, not a top-down regulatory approach.
Absolutely. And last question for you. As we kind of wrap up this interview, obviously the topic has been trade. What is your message then to agricultural organizations, in this case, the American Farm Bureau, which you spoke to this year at their annual convention here in Salt Lake City?
I think my main message is trade is still important, and we know that. We are working hard every day to make sure they have diverse markets to be able to sell food and agricultural products in. And the reason we do this is because it is important to farmers and ranchers' profitability in the rural communities that they live in. And so while we tackle this challenge, we are also working to make sure trade can work for everyone. Farmers of all sizes, businesses of all sizes, regardless of what they're producing, making sure that the barriers that they're experiencing, if they want to export their products, that we're tackling them so they have open, transparent markets to be able to sell the highest quality, the safest food in the world to consumers who are asking for it.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Again, we've been visiting with Alexis Taylor, USDA Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, just one of the many speakers here in Salt Lake City, Utah at this year's American Farm Bureau Federation Annual Convention. And of course, for more information about AFBF's trade policy, you can just jump online and visit them at fb.org. Well, one of the opportunities that the American Farm Bureau Federation Annual Convention, like this year's here in Salt Lake City, Utah, provides is farmers and ranchers from across America get to come together and hear informative speakers, learn about some new tools and technology in agriculture, and maybe most importantly, just to get away from the farm and ranch and have that opportunity to network with other fellow-minded producers from this great country of ours. And with us now is one of those very producers, Kris Descheemaeker from Lewistown, Montana, and you're also a board member for the Montana Farm Bureau Federation, Kris.
Yes.
Talk about why you and your husband Dennis and so many others like you folks want to come to this annual convention each year.
Well, for this year, it was a matter of getting away from the cold. It's nice to walk out of the hotel and not have your face hurt. Walking into 40-degree weather instead of minus 20 was really nice. But with that being said, we love the internet networking with the other people around. In Utah, there's a lot of Utah people here being in the state. I've talked to people who grow onions. It's a commodity that I'm not familiar with, so I get to learn about onions, and it's fascinating. And the trade show, I updated my rewards program with the John Deere company to get those maximum amount of rewards. And so there's things you can learn here, from attending the trade show to the workshops to the opening sessions to just talking with other people. It's our continuing education.
Well, and as I've mentioned with other producers here, I mean, there's plenty of challenges in agriculture, but there's also plenty of success stories.
Yes, there are.
To talk to one another about, and if nothing else, just give each other inspiration that you're still doing the right thing by being in the food and fiber industry.
Yeah, and I think this is my 4th convention, and there's probably more families here than I've ever seen at conventions. So seeing those families making that, I admire them for bringing those toddlers to this convention, because it's not easy chasing a toddler and trying to absorb everything there is. So seeing that commitment by the young people to make themselves familiar with their organization all the way up to the national level, that's just awesome.
I mean, it's also very informative and a great opportunity for producers to, like I mentioned, hear informative speakers, attend workshops, get updates on important policy issues that are impacting, farms and ranches across America, including back in your home state of Montana. One of those big issues is trade. Why is trade so important to farmers and ranchers like yourself?
Well, for us as a cow-calf producer, we have in the past taken our cattle to the end point, to the processor, and done the ownership to that point. But when they get to that processor, if there's an opportunity for an overseas market that they can put those cattle into, that benefits the price that we're going to get from those cattle. Doesn't matter if we're ownership to that point or we sell them to a farmer feeder who sells them. Having that opportunity to go beyond the domestic market is a key point of helping keep the market in a successful area for us as cow-calf producers back at home.
Isn't it pretty cool too when you come to this national convention where there's literally thousands and thousands of people in attendance and from states that are a lot bigger than Montana, but at the end of the day we're all trying to accomplish the same goal. But where I'm going with this, Kris, is even in states like Montana, here at the national level, it's pretty cool the clout states like Montana can have, and policy that was set last fall at state conventions can sometimes work their way into the American Farm Bureau Federation's policy book.
Definitely. Case in point, Fergus County Farm Bureau has had 2 different policies in the last 2 years accepted into that. One on apex predators and one asking BLM follow the Taylor Grazing Act. Those are really important issues on our local level, and now they're in the American Farm Bureau book. Then we have the American as well as the Montana lobbyists lobbying in Helena and DC for us on those points. And so, yeah, that's to me really impactful and a great reason why I belong to Montana Farm Bureau, which gives me membership in Fergus County Farm Bureau, Montana Farm Bureau, and American Farm Bureau for one membership. It's the most economical membership I have in the organizations. And because they're out there doing the things that I don't have time to do on a daily basis as a farm and ranch operator, advocating for my business. But I have someone there doing it almost 365 days a day for me.
Yeah, absolutely well said. And just all the more reason, folks, to pay your dues, whether it be
Yes.
at the local, state, or national level. Again, our thanks to Kris Descheemaeker from Central Montana for being with us here on this segment from the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention this year here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Again, for more information about all the important work that Farm Bureau is doing, whether it's back home in your individual state or on the national level, just visit your State Farm Bureau's website, or you can visit the American Farm Bureau Federation's website at fb.org. Well, one of the highlights each year here at the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention, which, by the way, this year is taking place here in Salt Lake City, Utah, is having the opportunity to catch up with Farm Bureau leaders from across America, including those from right here in Western Ag Network country. And joining us is one of those Farm Bureau leaders, Todd Fornstrom, the president of the Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. And Todd, just describe, why Wyoming still wants and appreciates the presence here on the national level during every year's American Farm Bureau convention.
First and foremost, the Farm Bureau family is it's just like getting back with old friends and family you've known forever. So the importance of the American Farm Bureau is putting us on the national stage. I mean, we are the center for a lot of things that people don't really realize, whether it be water, whether it be the national parks, the ESA. I mean, we're the front lines.
Well, you guys truly are the front lines. And of course, one of the big topics that we talked about last year that's now carried over into 2024 and truly is a big talking point with Farm Bureau members and leaders across the country is hopefully getting a new farm bill, because a farm bill means something to farmers and ranchers.
The Farm Bill, it's first and foremost that safety net that we in agriculture need. It's such a volatile industry that we live in. We need that security and that safety net.
You also mentioned water. Of course, water is the lifeblood of anything and all of us in agriculture, and certainly those of us that make a living out in the West. We talked about the waters of the U.S. It seems we've been talking a lot about that for the past 10, 15 years, but something a little bit more that hits home for folks in states like Wyoming and downstream, the Colorado Water Compact.
Yeah, the Colorado River, being that we're the headwater for a large portion of that river system, it's important because all of the people downstream depend on us along with what we are using here. So that relationship and knowing, first of all, we don't control the snowpack. So we have to be able to make that management of that watershed. We have to make it work. It has to work for everybody. So.
And of course, the power of any grassroots organization like Farm Bureau truly lies with its membership. And that's why, whether it's back home in Wyoming or down here in Utah or all parts in between and across this great country, we're just always encouraging more farmers and ranchers to get involved.
Yeah, it's a great organization. Everybody should be involved that's in agriculture.
Well, there you go. Again, we've been visiting with Todd Fornstrom, the president of the Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. Again, just one of the many attendees. In fact, there's thousands of attendees here in Salt Lake City, Utah at this year's American Farm Bureau Federation convention. We appreciate Todd taking a little bit of time to give us an update and his perspective on some of those key issues and why Farm Bureau is so important, whether it's back in his home state of Wyoming or across this entire country. Now, you can always find more information about the American Farm Bureau Federation by visiting fb.org. Hey, by the way, the 2025 American Farm Bureau Federation Convention is headed to San Antonio, Texas, January 24th through the 29th, so make plans right now to join us next year in the Lone Star State. The Western Ag Network is on the road. We're in Salt Lake City, Utah for the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention.